Hello everybody, my name is KingStix. We're going to be ranking the junglers from best to worst in a solo queue environment. It's important to note that you can take any one of these champions into diamond. Some will just be easier to do than others. So just because I put one of your favorite champions in low tier, don't get your feelings hurt. It's not personal. Alright? First things first, we're going to have to place Wukong down here in F tier. Anything that is in F tier, I wouldn't recommend anyone play at all, let alone play to have fun, because it's just trash right now. It's just the sad truth. If you're watching this video way off in the future, that may be different, but currently he's trash tier. This is basically minion tier right here. We're not even talking super minion, we're talking cannon minion. All right, and S tier is basically, if you want free low, 9 out of 10 times you can pick this champion and it's really strong, or it's just objectively overpowered. And to top off the S tier, there's only one champion that really comes to mind right now, and it's Zac. He has around a 53% win rate, an insane pick rate. He plays well against most comps. He plays well with most comps. The main thing is just don't gank too much at level 3. Try to hit level 4. Level 4 is your big power spike, and so is level 6. Because your E gets more and more range, and plus at level 6, Zac's ult is actually super OP. It's kind of like a fiddle ult in terms of raw power and just how much you can overwhelm somebody. Next up, we have an off-meta jungler, Brand. He's about to get a buff, and I think he's already decent. As is, I feel like he's D tier. With the upcoming buff that is about to drop here, I think he'll easily be C tier. So we'll set him right here, but he could easily float up to B. With that being said, he's slightly situational. I suggest picking him against melee heavy enemy comps, especially if they're tanky, since he has a lot of max health damage. Just get a void staff in the mid game and you'll just rip right through them. Next up is Mundo. He's also very situational. I don't recommend him too much unless the enemy team is full magic damage, since he gets a lot of magic resistance for free out of his E, I believe. So he gets a lot of magic resistance for free. Because of that, I can't put him too far up the list. In an ideal situation, he's B or A tier, but in general, I'll put him down here in C tier. Next up is Cho'Gath. He's not really viable. He's too slow and weak. With that being said, I would put him in front of Wukong, so Wukong can have a little friend down here. Next up is Galio. It's basically a worse version of Gragas jungle. With that being said, I feel like it is a little better than Cho'Gath jungle, so we'll set it right here. We might move this around a little bit later as we get some more faces down on the board. Next up is 𝐒𝐿. He's not the best right now. I wouldn't want to put him necessarily below Brand jungle. With that being said, he's kind of in here around C tier. He's not that great, and he doesn't scale very well, and honestly, I've beaten 𝐒𝐿s all the time with Brand jungle, even as is, so we'll just go ahead and leave him right here. 𝐒𝐿 isn't in the best spot he's ever been in. Next up, we have Amumu. Some people say he's OP, some people know he's trash. If you're in lower elo, he'll be a little bit better. In general, though, he's not that great because his ganks aren't reliable, and he's just not that strong in 1v1s. Because of that reason, we're going to put him here in front of these goobers. So he's in front of Brand, okay? Because right now, Amumu is considered okay if he goes full AP with Electrocute. So we'll set him right there. It's a reasonable spot. Next up, we have Evelynn. She's been floating around pretty hard over the past year and a half, from S tier all the way down to D tier. Right now, as is, I think she's somewhere around C tier. I think you could make the argument to put her in C or B. We'll just set her in B. Next up is Fiddlesticks. Extremely situational. If you're playing him against hyper carry champions like Yasuo, Fiddlesticks, or if the enemy team has 3 squishies or more, he's a pretty big threat, so you can't really place him definitively. With that being said, I will place him here in front of 𝐒𝐿. Next up is Ivern. I'm going to put him in the one tricks. There's just not that many information on this champion, and in general, only one tricks really have good success on him. Same thing with champions like Aurelion Sol. Next up is Shyvana jungle. More specifically, AP Shyvana jungle is pretty strong. It really is just a better version of Evelynn in terms of she can hit level 6 faster, and once she is 6, she's objectively stronger, and she can actually take dragons. If the dragon's open pre-6, Shyvana can burst it down really fast because of her passive bonus damage against dragons. Next up is Sion. I'll place him a little higher than these guys. We'll put him in E tier. He's a little bit better, scales better, and his 1v1s are a little bit stronger than them as well. Next up is Gragas. He's basically a pick in kind of challenger in pro play. He's got 2 knockups with his belly flop and his ultimate, which are difficult for teams to deal with. We will put him here in front of 𝐒𝐿. I'm not going to put him any higher than that. I don't think he's deserving in a solo queue environment. The only reason I'm even going to put him that high is because of his viability in higher elo. Next up is Graves. I don't recommend him at all. Don't think I'd really want to put him any higher than in front of 𝐒𝐿. We'll set him That's tough. We'll set him here for now, but we might move him later on. Then, of course, we have Rengar. We're going to have to put him in the one tricks category. We'll put him in front of Ivern because he can carry harder. There's just not enough information on him. I wouldn't recommend people playing him if they're not one tricks. In this category, I'm also going to be putting champions that are just, I've only ever seen one person be really high elo with them before. So it's just we don't have the numbers on them. And that champion would be Teemo, but I'm not seeing him on this list. Where the fuck is Teemo? You know what? We don't have Teemo. We'll put him in the next one, but it's not that big of a deal. There's only one person I even know of that plays Teemo jungle, and it's 𝐒𝐿𝐾𝐒. He did hit Challenger at one point last season as Teemo jungle, so I would put him down here. I'd also put Twitch jungle down here as well because of people like Rat IRL and other Twitch jungle connoisseurs, but he is a very dual reliant champion and very one trick reliant, so we're going to set him right there. Next up is Warwick. He used to be around A tier at the start of this season, but he's fallen down quite a ways. I would actually make the argument that these guys are D tier. I wouldn't really want to put Warwick. I'll put him here. I'll put him high C tier, but realistically, you could make the argument to put him in high D tier as well. Like, he floats pretty hard. In lower elo, he's a little better. In higher elo, he gets significantly worse. One slow and he's screwed. If Ashe hits him with one auto in a team fight, he can't do anything. So we're going to set him right here because of his early game prowess, but he is not ideal by any means. We'll set him right here. Qiyana. She's really tough to place in NA. People don't play her as a jungler. It's more of a thing in EU West or Korea. Can be an issue in higher elo. In lower elo, she's generally not an issue because of her weaker scaling. So we'll go ahead and set her right here behind Hecarim. In the right situation, you could easily put her higher up on the list, but in general, she doesn't get early gold. She doesn't necessarily scale well, and a lot of people can 1v1 her, particularly Conqueror champions. Next up is Jack's jungle. We will go ahead and put him in front of Taliyah. I think he's a little bit stronger and easier to play for sure. Next up is Lee Sin. Lee Sin has been very popular lately, but not only that, he's very strong with either Conqueror or Electrocute, so we will put him in A tier. Then we have Master Yi, who is in a very similar position. I think you can make the argument Master Yi is better. He can not only utilize funnel, but in a solo environment, he's also pretty solid as well, especially when you pick him when you have a shield or heal support on your team. If you do not have a heal or shield support on your team, he's not usually as good, but if you're picking him in the right condition, I believe he is easily A tier right now. Then we have Shen jungle. He's in a similar boat as these nerds down here. He's not amazing, and at the same time there's just not very many data points on him, so we're going to leave him in E tier right in front of Sion. His ganks are a little bit better because of his dash taunt, and if he gets an early team out, he can clear pretty decently. Next up is Rammus. Rammus is kind of decent right now. I would put him in front of Evelynn, and in fact we'll go ahead and drop Evelynn down. As I put more champions down, I realized I definitely placed Evelynn too high on this list, and I think a much more fair spot would be down here in front of these guys. Next up is Karthus. He is A tier as well. For all of you who keep asking me who would I recommend to play when climbing solo queue, in general, I would recommend B tier and up. Things lower than B tier tend to be more situational or just not as strong. So we have Karthus. Another big addition to that would be Echo. And then another big addition to that would be Olaf. I wouldn't make the argument that anyone besides Zach is S tier right now. I'm not playing him because he's my favorite champion in the world. I'm playing him because he's strong, and you might as well play what's strong before they nerf it right. Okay, next up is Kayn. He's one trick material. The main issue with Kayn is in solo queue just takes so long to get going. If I realistically did have to place him, he'd be somewhere down here around Evelynn in C tier. But I'm going to go ahead and stick him in the one trick category in front of these guys, but behind Rengar. Next up is Xin Zhao. It's kind of like a better version of Shen, at least as a jungler. He has much better ganks, more CC, and he's also a lot stronger in 1v1s early on. Because of that reason, we're going to put him here in front of these guys. I think he belongs in C tier, and we might actually have to pull Mundo back a bit. We have him pretty high up there. We'll see though. Next up is Maokai. He's not viable, but I would make the argument that he is more viable than these turds, especially against AP comps. You could put him a little higher up, but in general, I would say Maokai is above these people. I wouldn't put him in front of Shen though. As long as Shen goes TMI, he should be fine. Next up is Vi. A lot of people ask me about her. I would compare her to Xin Zhao and Jarvan in terms of her strengths. She builds similar items normally. Not only that, but they perform the same function. They're 80 kind of bruisers who rely on their dashes to secure ganks and secure kills. I think she's a little better than Xin is right now, and I would comfortably put her at the front of C tier. in front of these goons. Next up is Malphite jungle. It's not near as viable as it used to be, the various nerfs. Because of that reason, we are going to have to put it back here behind the Gragas, and we might shift that later. Orange jungle, I have personally not seen enough data sets on. I think it's very slow startup, and I think it's very easy to kill in the jungle in solo queue. So if he's playing against a Conqueror jungler like Lee Sin, Master Yi, or Warwick, if they aggress on him early, he can have a lot of issues. Because of that reason, I wouldn't put him up any higher than maybe like right here, but I just don't have enough data points on him. He's just not played enough, so I'm gonna have to leave him all the way down here, and the one tricks in the back. Next up is Kindred. She's not in an awful spot, while at the same time she is mildly dual reliant because of her marks. And she's also struggling a bit in this fast-paced League of Legends where early dragons can decide a lot and there's double heralds. While at the same time, she does have a bit of a niche position playing against tank junglers if she does take cut down. For that reason, we are going to set her here in front of Evelynn and in front of these goons. You know what, let's put her in front of Mundo as well. Mundo's a little too situational. We'll put him here in front of Bran and Fiddle Jungle and all that stuff. Next up, we have Nunu. He's not the best tank jungler right now, but he is one of the better ones. I think it would be fair to put Nunu in B tier or maybe C tier. We'll set him here in B tier for now. I will say Nunu is more reliant on teammates for damage since he does far less damage than Zac or Rammus in 1v1s or in team fights in general. Next up, we have 𝐒𝐂𝐂𝐿. 𝐒𝐂𝐂𝐿's actually in a very comfortable spot right now. He's fairly healthy for what he does. Obviously, we're not really going to see him in pro play, but in a solo queue environment, I think he is doing just fine. We'll set him here in B tier. Then we have Nidalee. AD carries are kind of rising up right now, especially things like Vayne shredding into tanks like Zac and Rammus, and even at some Aftershock Amumu's. Because of that reason, Nidalee has actually gotten a lot better, particularly in higher elo. So we're going to be putting her in B tier. If you're lower elo, you still shouldn't be playing her. She's kind of goofy to play, and she can struggle in 1v1s and just 1v9ing in general. Next up is Poppy. She struggles for the same reason a lot of these tankier champions do. They take forever to scale. Even though Poppy's level 3 is pretty damn strong, she has a lot of issues with scaling, and she's just not ideal. You have better options. You have Xin Zhao, you have Jarvan. Poppy's just a worse version of that. She's the Dr. Mario to Mario. We're going to set her here behind Shen. I would still make the argument that she's considerably better than these tanks. However, there's still a lot of tanks above her. Things like Xin Zhao and Jarvan are going to be above her as well. Jarvan is currently a better version of Xin Zhao. Xin Zhao's not in the best spot. We would have to put Jarvan up here behind AP Shyvana, but in front of Rammus and the 𝐒𝐂𝐂𝐿. He has way better CC, and he's a little bit more consistent and can put out a lot of early game pressure. If you want to put out early game pressure and really control your games and your team needs AD, Jarvan is a solid pick. And then we have Sejuani. She's struggling a little bit right now because she's been over-nerfed. I'd put her a little bit behind Nunu. With that being said, if you can stay alive on Sejuani and not die pre-6, I do believe Sejuani has a much better late game than Nunu has. Much better lockdown, much more consistent. Udyr is a tough champion to place. Not many data sets on him. Haven't been seeing a lot of him, and he's very one-dimensional. You already know what he's going to do. He's going to try to cheese you at level 2 or level 3, and if he doesn't, he auto loses since he doesn't scale very well. It would be tough to place him anywhere on this list because if he does get an early lead, it's kind of like a Garen. It's a little bit mindless and he just runs at you. So we're either going to put him in the one tricks category. The only other fair spot I could possibly see for him would to be kind of in D tier. It's either one tricks or D tier, guys. Sorry about that. Next up is Skarner. We're going to put him in the one tricks. You know what? Let's place him. I think that would be really lazy not to play Skarner. We'll put him at the front of E. He's not great, and he's still better than these champs, but by no means do I think you should go out and play him. Next up is Volibear. I've been placing him a lot lower in prior tier lists. In this one, I think we're gonna have to put him a little bit higher up. He has some interesting counter matchups, especially against things like Zac. Volibear can mess up early with his roar, can knock Zac right out of the air. I don't think Volibear has the best scaling, but I think he's a reasonable choice right now. I'd actually put him up in mid D tier next to all these other beautiful champions. I wouldn't put him in front of Hecarim though, or Graves, especially if Hecarim were to go Ignite. I think Hecarim could easily dumpster. Volibear struggles against enemy teams that have decent CC because he doesn't have a proper gap closer. It's a very slow run. Meanwhile, things like Hecarim have a powerful ulti to close the distance or much stronger speed up. If Volibear were to get a considerable buff on his Q, I think it would be fair to put him up here in C tier. He's very easy to kite out and he's just really not that fast. Next up is Trundle. I think Trundle's really strong right now. He has a lot of damage versus this tank meta. There's a lot of tank supports, there's a lot of tank junglers right now, and he's a really good counter pick into them because of his ultimate. Blood Razor's a pretty good choice on him right now. I wouldn't personally go Cinder. Trundle is in a comfortable spot to carry games. I've in fact played him 3 or 4 times this patch and I've had really great success. I haven't dropped a game on him, but you need to pick him in the right situation. Play him against tank junglers and you'll be looking at a free win. Go ahead and put Trundle right there in C tier. Then we have Silas Jungle. His win rate is absolutely god awful and I actually never see him. Because of that, we're going to have to put him in here behind 𝐒𝐻𝐿. Then we have Taliyah. She's a bit of a one-trick material and a lot like an AP version of Twitch. She's super early gold gank reliant, and if she doesn't get that gold, she can fall really far behind, give very little value to her team. I would still say she's better than Wukong because her early ganks are stronger and more fast because she can ride the walls. So we'll go ahead and put her here in front of these goons. And if her early gank doesn't work, she's basically as bad as Wukong. But assuming her early gank works, she has some potential. She's really teetering on the edge of trash and being good. All she needs is a few buffs and she easily goes back up to S tier because she turns into a hyper cheese jungler that's very, very difficult to deal with. So we'll set her right there in E tier. Next up is Pantheon. He's in a similar boat as Poppy where there's just simply better options in him. We'll go ahead and place him here in front of 𝐒𝐻𝐿. He has some really strong cheese ganks, and if he can get some early kills, get into some lethality items, he has a decent chance of carrying his game. Next up is Nocturne. He's objectively terrible right now. He's extremely lethality item oriented, and with how long it takes junglers to hit level 6, he's in a bit of a rough spot. We'll go ahead and put him in front of Wukong, and in front of Cho'Gath, and in front of Galio, and we'll put him right there in front of these guys. Next up is Rek'Sai. She is an interesting champion. I don't personally condone playing her. I feel like she doesn't scale, and for how mediocre her ganks are realistically, I don't think she's justified playing. I feel like she's very easy to play against. And once again, she falls off really hard, but her early game is decent. She has a lot of early game power. The higher elo you are, the better she is. If you're in Challenger, you could easily argue she's B tier or A tier. If you're in like Platinum or lower, she's definitely around D tier. So I think we're going to go ahead and put her in front of these guys. She has some interesting matchups against invisible champions like Evelynn. She's a hard counter. Against 𝐒𝐿𝐿, she can be really good. Anything that goes invisible. Also, any comps that may want to sit in a bush for whatever reason, she can be good. She's also very good if you're punishing bad early game junglers like Amumu. You can go into their jungle, kill them, take their camps, whatever. She has solid escapes, solid chase down. Next up is Aatrox. I wouldn't condone playing him, and I don't think it's a good idea. With that being said, I'll go ahead and place him right there in E tier. Still better than some of these champions. Then we have Mordekaiser. We don't have enough data points on him. I haven't seen him enough, so I don't want to just place him in low tier because I just haven't seen it. With that being said, I don't think he's great, and I wouldn't want to have him on my team. Next up is Elise. She is one of the best junglers, particularly in higher elo and lower elo. Once again, I wouldn't recommend playing her, but we're gonna have to place her according to her, more to her potential rather than my preference. Even though I don't prefer her, I recognize her potential, and her potential is somewhere like this, somewhere around A tier. You could say she's low A tier or high A tier. It's just kind of counter matchups. Things like Olaf can give her trouble, especially once he's level 6, but then she can also do very well against things like Lee Sin, just kind of stun him out of the air or go into spider form. So we'll just place her right there. 𝐒𝐿𝐿 isn't that great right now. He's extremely reliant on lethality items, which are kind of meh, and 𝐒𝐿𝐿 himself isn't that great. He's more of one-trick material. I think it's very reasonable to place him right here. And then we have Diana, which actually isn't half bad as a jungler now that she has a dash pre-6. Even though she doesn't have any real CC pre-6, she does have the dash, so it's very similar to an AP 𝐒𝐿𝐿, but honestly probably better than 𝐒𝐿𝐿. So I think it would be fair to place her here in front of Malphite Jungle. And in fact, I think we placed Malphite Jungle far too high, and we're going to have to drop him down here in front of these guys and behind these guys. Next up on the list, we have Camille. She's not viable as a jungler. I wouldn't recommend playing her. It can be fun, but she doesn't scale the best, and she's extremely reliant on Tiamat for clears. So we aren't going to put her up very high. She's basically a worse version of Qiyana as is in terms of their mobility and ganks. In theory, Camille could be better because her dash is so long, but the issue is Camille has a lot of trouble clearing, especially before Tiamat. In fact, she's not even listed as a jungler, so the only fair spot to truly put her is in the not available category, or to put her here in front of some current meta junglers who also don't show up as junglers in any region. So I think the most fair spot to put her would be to be behind Poppy, but to be in front of these goons right here.
I have 3 other junglers that I wasn't going to include, but I decided I might as well if I'm going to have things like Brand Jungle in here, and that is Darius, Garen, and Talon. As we all know, they've been viciously trying to shove them into the jungle meta with very little success. The worst one of all is definitely Talon. I would say that Talon is probably about the same rate as Poppy Jungle, maybe slightly higher near Nocturne. This is about the highest you could possibly place Talon. If you really want to push it, you could push him past the Skarner here. I personally wouldn't do that though. I think around Nocturne is fair. For Garen, it's a little bit higher. It's kind of around right there. And then for Darius, I personally haven't seen it and I can't really find any stats on it. We are gonna have to put it somewhere in here. And then the only reason why I didn't put Zed is because Zed had less than a 20% win rate as a jungler, so we're not even going to bother. He'd probably be behind Wukong, honestly.
And that is going to conclude our tier list, guys. Once again, you could easily hit diamond with any of these champions if you put in the time and effort. So don't feel like you're being prosecuted. Don't get your feelings hurt. That's not what this is about. I'm just trying to make an objective list to help people climb and to give people a better idea of where the meta is at right now. And once again, guys, depending on what elo you're in, this list could change a little bit. Once again, you can take any one of these champions into high elo, so don't get butthurt. That's going to wrap up this list. My name is KingStix. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.